Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Wolf Bites podcast, a podcast where we sink our teeth into all things metaphysical, spiritual, paranormal, political, and more. And today we're going to be doing something a little bit different in this witchy variety show of mine. We're going to be breaking up some of the more heavy philosophical and, sociological talks that we've been having with the hekatewitchtag done by Justin Bennett or the Witch of Enchantment. If you don't know who that is, I'm going to be linking them in the description, so go ahead and check him out. But I'm going to be doing this tag because I thought a lot of these questions were just really good. And a lot of these things were things I kind of wanted to share and wanted to talk about on this channel anyway. But I had no idea how to bring it up without individually making a video for each of these. And that was just really daunting for me. So I thought that this was just perfect. And I thought it was a really good way to connect with other people and to share my experiences in the same way that other Hekate devotees have been sharing theirs. And I've been watching a lot of these videos. I'm going to be leaving links to some of the videos that I really connected with and jived with that I've seen so far from this tag, and links to the playlist that Justin just made as well, so that way you can find that easily and see other people's videos. But I've just been seeing a lot of people sharing just these amazing things that, I also have experienced or could understand from a perspective of also working with her, and I thought that this was just incredible. So I wanted to take part as well. So we're going to just kind of carry on from this portion of the video into the more podcasty style, so you can feel free to listen. There is one part of this where, he asks about your altar space and stuff, so if you want to tune in during that part and actually see what I have on the screen, feel free, but I'm also going to be describing everything that I'm showing, so if you are just listening, you'll be okay. But yeah, without further ado, let's just get into the questions. Question number 1. How did Hekate first enter your life? There's kind of two answers to this question. There's when I was cognizant that it was Hekate, because I knew who she was and I knew that's kind of what was happening. And then there's kind of, after having worked with her for as long as I've worked with her, me kind of connecting the dots and looking back at experiences I've had as a kid that kind of seem to be archetypally Hekatean in some way that I feel had her presence there. So let's just kind of move on to the second half of the question, which is when I was cognizant that it was Hekate. And then we'll kind of circle back to this on question number 6. So I had already been a witch for a couple years before I had started working with deities. I had been practicing chaos magic underneath a more psychological, kind of agnostic paradigm, kind of more Jungian based. But I had come out as trans a couple years before I started doing deity work, and during this time, I had been looking into mythology a lot more, looking into this more Jungian archetypes and stuff. I've been watching a lot of Kellyanne Maddox's videos, and I had started to become inspired to possibly try shifting into a paradigm of deity belief and worship, because I wanted to connect with the archetype of Dionysus. I thought it would be helpful for me when it came to being a transmasculine person undergoing, a lot of exploration around sexuality and gender and presentation and expression and all that. So I really thought that Dionysus would be my guy for that. And he has been. But when I first started working with deities, I had tried for months to find some sort of way to contact him, and I had kind of sometimes felt his presence or some sort of hint that he might be there, but realistically, it was mostly just crickets. I really wasn't getting anything. But before I had started working with him, because I knew I was working underneath the sort of Greco-Roman pantheon, and I was not just working with Dionysus, but I was really focusing on him. I wanted to be sort of polytheistic about it. And I figured, well, I am a witch. I've been a witch for quite some time. I'm about to switch into this paradigm of religiosity, essentially. So I want to honor the goddess of witchcraft within this paradigm. And I didn't really know too much about Hekate at the time. I had vague notions about her from like stuff I saw on like TikTok and Facebook, which was very, very baseline and not nearly as complex, not nearly as deep as this goddess is. I basically just knew her as like Queen of Witches, and that's about it. But I figured, because she's associated with being the goddess of witchcraft within this sort of pantheon, why not make something for her and set up just like a little space to acknowledge her, just out of respect, being like, hey, I'm a witch, I'm kind of doing your work. I see you, I respect you, thank you for being you. Here is a little space. And I set up just a little space in the corner of my bedroom right next to my dresser that had like a little vanity mirror attached to it. And so I made like this witch's ladder sort of thing out of a piece of string, a wire wrapped clear quartz crystal, a bone I found out of an owl pellet, and an antique key that I had had for some time. I used to collect a lot of oddities and random stuff, so I had a lot of stuff like that already on hand. So I made that, I hung it up on the wall along with some other sort of imagery that I thought was, kind of associated with Hekate in my mind. And yeah, that was just kind of that, and then I just kept trying to contact Dionysus, and getting nowhere for several months before I decided, you know what? Clearly this is not working. And at first I was thinking, well, clearly this deity work thing is bullshit. Clearly the gods are not real, as I suspected, like whatever this is just obviously some, BS. But as I was starting to kind of revert back to my previous paradigm, I kept finding myself drawn to that corner. Drawn to spending time towards my vanity mirror in that corner. Just drawn to, like, looking at it. I would catch myself just, like, dazing off looking at it, and I would, like, come back and realize that I was staring off into this corner for who knows how long at where the Hekate stuff was. And so sometimes when I would feel drawn to it, I decided, let me just light a candle over here, or let me just light some incense. And then after some time, it kind of dawned on me, like, hey, wait a minute. Is this what this is? Is this what's happening? It's actually Hekate. It's not Dionysus. That's what's happening. I'm being called to by a deity. I'm being called to by Hekate. So this isn't BS. This is just, I just barked up the wrong tree, essentially. It just wasn't the right time for me to interact with Dionysus. That's why I was getting crickets. That's why I was getting nothing. But now I'm getting something. So I thought, okay, well, let's test this out then. Let me interact. Let me do some divination. Let me, contact her using my pendulum, contact her using tarot. And so I started doing that, and I started getting results. I started getting connection. I started getting responses. And that's how everything began. I feel very honored in many ways because I feel like she reached out to me. She saw what I wanted. She saw the potential there. And I think, yes, I did put in the effort to give her a little space, but really it was mostly just a gesture of kindness and respect. It wasn't out of me trying to contact her, but I think just that was enough. Just that. Just thinking about her, just saying, hey, I see you. I'm a witch. I'm doing your work. I see you. Here you go. Here's something just for you. Because you are you. And because I am me. And because we are alike in some way. And that was enough. And that's where everything began. Question number 2. What aspect or epithet of Hekate do you connect with most, and why? Alright, so I kind of connect with all of her aspects. I find her to be an incredibly, relatable goddess just due to the type of person I am. And I think that's why I find her so archetypally empowering for me. So I work with all of her aspects, but I tend to work with the sort of Hekate triformis, like the triple-faced aspect of her, because that's how she presents to me, but it's not necessarily the way that it seems. So basically, she tends to come to me in 3 different ways, but these ways are not like one face for each. It's more like multiple clusters of faces for each, and they tend to have different themes that they work together with. So one face will be kind of 3 different faces doing different things. So I'll put on screen kind of how she tends to come to me in this way and how I tend to incorporate that into my practice, and what the 3 faces of Hekate are to me. It kind of boils down to the torchbearer, or the sort of light-bearing aspect, the protective, world soul, almost motherly aspect, and then the crossroads, key-bearing, liminal, transformational aspect. That's just my own personal gnosis, though, that this is just kind of how I have interpreted it through my own practice and how she has come to me. So these are the aspects that I connect with the most, because these are the ones that she has kind of presented to me the most. So I connect with the light-bearing aspect, the key-bearing aspect, and the world soul, for all of these different reasons that you will see on screen. Next is question number 3. How do you honor Hekate in your daily or monthly practice? So, I don't really do a monthly or daily practice in the typical way, and that's because I have devoted essentially my entire spiritual path to Hekate, which means, in a way, every single day, every spell I do, every time I give to anyone is an act of devotion to her. And so I've kind of given my life in some way to her. So I don't think that there's nothing else I could give. How many incense sticks do I need to burn that's equal to that? How many tea lights do I need to burn that's equal to that? Nothing. What I give is who I am, and that's enough. I don't need to really give anything else. And that's something that I find freeing and beautiful about Hekate and working with her. Number 4. Do you have a dedicated altar or space for her, and what's on it? Alright, so if you weren't watching and you were just listening before, I'm gonna put on screen, I know it's in dreaded portrait mode, but this is because the space is really vertical, and I wanted you to see everything on it at once without having to pan up and down the whole time. So the altar I have in my main living space is pretty simple. I have some crystals, some key motif things. I have this snake mirror candle holder that I have her statue on. Some candles that are in this jar next to it. I have this little bottle of dragon's blood scented perfume. This bowl with the stuff in it actually is dedicated to Pan, and that's a whole separate thing, but I have it going right here because, like I said, I often associate just my magic in general with Hekate, so I often do workings just casually around her altar. So that's kind of a separate thing going on. And then behind that I have this wood burning drawing thing that I made. I'm pretty new to pyrography. This is one of the first pieces I ever made a couple of years ago. I haven't really done it since, just because I haven't had the materials and the time. And then all around in the background, there's just different visual motifs that remind me of Hekate. Question number 5. What offering do you most enjoy giving Hekate, and what do you think she enjoys? So I really don't think that there's anything in particular that she enjoys. Like, I don't think that there's one thing that, like, everyone can give her that she will enjoy, other than you giving her something out of just a genuine feeling in your heart. I think just you just honestly and earnestly giving something to her is what really matters. It's not about what you give, it's about how you give and why you give. You know, it's not about the things, because, I mean, she doesn't need the physical objects. What's she gonna do with it? You know what I mean? It's about the energetic exchange that's going on, because that's what she's getting. That's what she's receiving. You know, and that's what she's gonna give back to you. So that's really what's most important. So I'd say that her most enjoyed offering is just your honesty, your generosity, your respect, and your thoughtfulness. As far as offerings go, though, like, if I had to pick particular items that I tend to be drawn towards, I'd say dragon's blood scented anything. I really like working with dragon's blood, incense with her. Sometimes if I do cleansings where I call upon her, I might, like, take a shower and use, like, dragon's blood scented soap, or just something simple like that. To me, that really is a good scent to pair with her, but that's kind of a bias, because I just love dragon's blood for, like, frickin' everything. If you've seen any of my videos, you hear me talk about it all the time. But I also give her frankincense, myrrh. Sometimes I'll burn some, like, copal for her. But really, I guess it depends on the aspect that I'm calling upon, and the season, and the vibe, like, what's going on. Like, there's very few things that I give consistently to her, but I'd say that, like, you know, dragon's blood scented stuff, garlic, onions, honey, water, wine, those are the main things. Other than that, like, maybe I'll light candles as well. You know, but that's really it for the most part. I don't really go too fancy with her. I don't really find it's necessary all the time, although I do like to make her altar spaces look nice, as you've seen. But I don't think that she needs a whole lot, because, like I said, it's more about the intention. It's more about the energetic exchange. Number 6. Has Hekate ever appeared to you in a dream, vision, or moment of crisis? Yeah, so let's kind of circle back to question number 1. Let's talk about when I was a baby. So when I was 6 months old, my parents adopted a little Rottweiler puppy named Mackenzie. And if you don't know what a Rottweiler looks like, I'll put it up on screen. They're mostly black, but they also have, like, a little bit of tan, or like a rusty brownish red color on them. And by all accounts, Mackenzie was your average 6 to 7 month old puppy. You know, she was very rambunctious, she was very energetic, she was very excitable, playful. But when it came to me, who was also around the same age as her at the time, well, not at the time, we were both the same age. But, you know, when it came to me, she was very gentle and very cuddly and very almost cognizant of how fragile a human baby is, in a very sensitive way that just felt kind of special. And she was very connected to me, to the point where if my mom put me to bed at night, oftentimes Mackenzie would be sleeping on the floor next to my crib. And the type of crib I had when I was a baby was one of those cribs that had a latch where you could lock it in place, and then if you unlocked it out of place, the crib would slide down, like, all the way. And that way you could, like, slide out the mattress or whatever. If I can find a picture of what I'm talking about, I'll put it on screen. But basically, as I got a little bit older and became a little bit more mobile and more curious and restless at night, I became one of those babies that became a little escape artist and tried to climb out of my crib at night. During this, I was just under 1 year old. And somehow during the night when I was trying to escape my crib, I had unlatched the crib latch, and gravity did its thing, and the side of the crib came crashing down. And somehow, I don't recall this because I was far too young, but somehow my head was between the bars when that happened. And so with my head between the bars of the crib, the top of the crib basically sandwiched my neck in between the edge of the mattress, crushing me down against that and suffocating me. And so I was too young and too weak to be able to lift it up and save myself. And I was also suffocating, like, instantaneously. So I couldn't cry, I couldn't scream, I couldn't make any sound to alert my mom, who had fallen asleep on the couch. But Mackenzie had been in my room at the time, and that had obviously woken her up and startled her, and she had run out of the room and started barking and whining, which woke up my mom. And at first my mom thought, oh, don't wake up the baby, come on, trying to settle Mackenzie down, but Mackenzie would not settle down. And usually she would listen, but she just would not settle down, and she kept running back and forth between my room and my mom, just barking and whining and yipping in a way that my mom had never seen before. And so my mom rushes into my room trying to figure out what's going on, why is the dog going crazy? And she flips on the light and sees what's going on, and she said that she thought I was dead because I was practically purple, I was blue. She lifts up the crib and pulls me out of that, and I start gasping for air and crying, and I was alive and I was okay. But if it wasn't for Mackenzie, she would have still been asleep on the couch. I would have died as an infant. And I really believe that due to Hekate's connection with children and protecting mothers and infants, her connection to life and death, her connection to dogs and puppies, especially black dogs, which Rottweilers are predominantly black. I really believe that this was a situation where Hekate's presence was there to protect me. Number 7. What lesson has she taught you that changed your life? Oh gosh, so many. I can't really point to one in particular. I think every lesson I learn is because of the path that I'm on, and the path that I'm on is kind of directed in some ways by her. So, it's like every lesson I learn is kind of due to her. But I think, learning to do shadow work was very important. Learning to introspect and really understand what to do with myself. I was in a space at the time when I met her where I had a spark within me, and I knew I had it, but I just didn't know what to do. I still felt very lost. I knew that there was something inside that could become, a flame, but there was this darkness inside and all around me. There was parts of me that I didn't know, that I was scared of. There was outside world that I was scared of and uncertain about. And what she really taught me was how to discover the darkness within me and not fear that, and to be able to look at that and integrate that to the point where I could focus on the darkness outside. And not only that, but she also taught me how to feel through the darkness, to find the things I needed to then take the spark within me and create my own torch. What I really like about Hekate and working with her is that she doesn't really coddle you. She's very like teach a man to fish. She doesn't give you her torch. That is her torch. She needs that, okay? She needs that to do her job. She's not going to give it to you, but she is going to show you how to make your own with the spark inside of you. And that's a really powerful thing, because in some ways, then you can become a torchbearer. Then you can have that light and be that light in the darkness. You can see around you in the darkness and not be afraid. You can really assess and look at the things that you come across, and also you can be a beacon for those who also might be lost. And I think that is the biggest lesson that she has taught me in my life. Question number 8. How does your queerness or identity influence your devotion to her? I know it might be surprising considering how, like, aggressively queer I am, but I kind of think it's the other way around. I really think that my devotion to her has influenced my identity and therefore my queerness in a way. Like, yeah, I do think that everyone comes at their spirituality with their own identity and therefore kind of a bias based on the lens that they see the world in. I kind of talked about this a little bit in my Fenrir video. So, like, yes, my queerness does influence my practice, but I also think that it's kind of, my practice also influences my queerness quite a lot too. And so it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. So I really think that because I started this journey shortly after I came out as trans, and because I wanted to have some sort of spiritual support with that, that it really has influenced the way I see my queerness and the way I express it through magic a lot of the time. And, you know, my identity as a transmasculine person has really been shaped by the sort of magic man, wizard, mage, witch archetype. That sort of fluid, kind of feral, kind of mystical, but also intelligent and clever. You know, I really like that sort of archetype in a way that almost connects me to myself in many aspects of my identity that overlap, including my gender and my queerness. So I don't really know if my queerness influences it or if it is the thing that influences my queerness. I kind of think it's a little bit of both. And I really like the way that interplay plays out within my life. It's one of the things that I really enjoy about my spirituality, and that really keeps me going in times of darkness, especially in times right now when it comes to, you know, being a queer person in America. I mean, shit is fucking scary, guys. And having a spiritual backbone in place to help you through these moments is just really instrumental. And, like, who better to have on your side than Hekate? I really think that her being a goddess of the liminal and a goddess of the margins and those who are oppressed and those who need protection, those who have not, you know, had their voices heard, there is something there that drives me forward in times of crisis. And especially times right now, I feel myself being a lot more drawn to her in my path right now and kind of reconnecting back to her as my home base. And I think it's really because of the shit going on in the world, and I really think that it's because she is a really good goddess to work with when it comes to that. For anyone on the margins, you know, whether that's because of queerness or just because you feel like an outcast, you know? Number 9. What's your favorite Hekatean ritual, spell, or sacred tool? I don't know, I'm not a Hekatean. I mean, okay, yes, I am a Hekate devotee, but I'm also a polytheist, pantheist, kind of agnostic, kind of Discordian, chaos magic-y, mess of a contradiction type of guy. So my devotion to Hekate is kind of unique in a way. So I don't really do any particular Hekatean ritual or spell, and I don't really know any particular tools that would be used in a Hekatean ritual, other than maybe a dagger or like a key or something. I guess my most sacred tool is probably my key necklace. I use it as a conduit for the goddess, as a sort of amulet, you know. I use it as a daily reminder of my path and who the fuck I am, you know what I mean? Like, I guess that's my favorite tool, is my key necklace, yeah. And finally, we get to the end, which is number 10. What advice would you give to someone just starting a path with Hekate? Okay, so I've narrowed this down to like 3 main tips. And of course, these are tips from my perspective and from what I learned. And it's kind of hard for me to give tips for starters, considering my entrance to working with her was kind of her coming to me. So I don't really know how to approach Hekate because I don't feel like I did. I feel like she came to me. Although I guess if you were to use my path as an example, I'd say the first thing that you want to do is just earnestly give something or make something. You know, I didn't know anything about her. I know everyone says, like, do your research, learn all you can, and, like, yes, you should do that when you work with a deity. But I don't even know if that's necessary when you, like, first want to connect. I think that is, like, the secondary step. I think the first step is to just find an earnest place in your heart to give, or to say a prayer, or to just try to talk, light a candle, anything, you know? I think that's where it really starts to get into connection. But anyway, I've broken this down into 3 main tips, and these tips go as follows. Tip number 1, get comfy with being uncomfy. So Hekate is a goddess of liminality and the margins and the crossroads and darkness in some ways, death in some ways, being lost or uncertain in other ways. So when it comes to transformation, liminality, uncertainty, there's going to be the uncomfortable. You're going to need to face uncertainty and mystery and unanswered questions and things that might make you feel fearful or uncomfortable, uneasy. And one of the things that I think would be helpful when, you know, starting a path with Hekate, if this is kind of resonating with you, is to find a way to be more fascinated than frustrated by things like unanswered questions, mystery, uncertainty, ambiguity, silence, stillness, being alone. All of these things can be tools that you can actually use, as well as teachers that you can learn from. So I would say, if this is resonating with you, and you're trying to approach Hekate, find a way to approach things like this with curiosity rather than avoidance and fear. My second tip is expect to change, and expect to change a lot slower than you thought. Patience is a virtue, and so celebrate the little things. As you change and as you develop, every little step is a step towards whatever the next day is going to bring, right? And hopefully, at the end of the day, it leads you down a path of growth, right? But you're not going to grow overnight just because you start working with Hekate. You're not going to grow overnight just because you do anything. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is spiritual enlightenment. Sorry to burst your bubble. So you're going to need to do it every day. And that's the hard part, right? So celebrate the little things, you know? If the best you can do that day is get out of bed and brush your teeth, then celebrate that. That's okay, and that's enough, and give that to the goddess. Have that be your devotion to her. Like I said, it's not about what you give. And sometimes the best thing you can give her is your tears of grief. And other times the best thing you can give her is a huge celebration and a feast day, right? So celebrate what you have when you have it, even if it's a little thing, and find gratitude in that. And my third tip, and kind of my most important tip, I think, and one that's kind of a bitter pill to swallow, is get ready to get real. Because Hekate is not going to let you lie to yourself. And she's not going to let you see the lies of the world around you or others either. And that means you're going to need to face things that you're not going to like, and that are going to be, like I said before, uncomfortable. And so, you know, you need to be ready to face reality, and to face reality within yourself and within the world around you. You know, your ego, your ignorance, your illusions and delusions, those things are not going to survive the flames of the torchbearer, okay? And so you're going to learn how to become yourself and know your surroundings and know things around you. and you'll have to let go of some things, but you'll also gain a lot out of that. You'll gain so much wisdom and insight, both within yourself and with others, to help connect to them. So that way, when you have your torch, and when you have that beacon, when others come to you who might be lost, you'll know what to do. You'll know what to give. You'll know how to help. And that's kind of the lesson that she perpetuates, and really the path that a lot of Hekateans seem to kind of fall into in one way or another, is that sort of guiding, helpful companion role that she plays. And of course she plays many other roles as well, but I found that at least a lot of the people who tend to end up on YouTube are those types of people who are drawn to this particular epithet or aspect of her. But yeah, I think those are my 3 tips for starters for Hekate, and those are all 10 questions of the Hekatean witch tag. If you have not heard of Justin Bennett before, please go check him out. Any related videos, Justin's channel, all that will be in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, do all the good stuff. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.